Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live virtual session. I'm Rachel Reynosa, Senior Editor at People Matters, and your host for today. This episode of the series, HR Spotlight, is brought to you by People Matters in association with the SAP SuccessFactors. Nurturing talent and simplifying the learning and development process for all employees are vital to businesses today. Whether it's to drive organizational growth or maintain a competitive edge, learning leads us into the future of work. The third episode of the series is on smarter ways of working, smarter ways of learning, and I'm excited to welcome our experts. Today we have with us Anung Anindita, Senior Vice President, Human Resources at PT Pegadaian. Anung is an accomplished HR leader with proven expertise in HR policy and procedure. Anung is a creative thinker, problem solver, and decision maker who effectively balances the needs of employees with the vision and mission of the organization. Welcome, Anung. We also have with us Sujay Bhat, HR Technology Strategy Advisor, SAP SuccessFactors. Sujay is an experienced leader with new business and account management experience in consulting, cloud, and SaaS-based IT services across India, the Philippines, Singapore, and China. Welcome, Sujay. A quick note to our attendees, if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to use the chat window. We will bring up your questions during the audience Q&A. Now, before we start the panel discussion, I do have a quick poll question for our attendees. I request you all to go to www.menti, that's MENTI.com, and use the code that you see on the screen. It's 51927841 to participate in the poll. Now, the question is, what is your number one goal in driving your L&D strategy? So head on over to menti.com to take part. Let's give it a minute for the results to come in. And so we have 60% saying upskilling to close the skills gap. 50% want to improve employee performance and productivity as part of their L&D agenda. Sujay, would you like to comment on the results of our poll?
So I think these results are spot on, right? Given the choices that we had. And I think there's a third option as well. And I guess people are submitting their response as we speak. So, if we were to look at what we're seeing now, upskilling, yes, with all that's happening around us, upskilling and reskilling is extremely important. And the purpose of doing that is to ensure that employees are able to deliver on business outcomes, which is nothing but top line revenue. So productivity and performance is at a 33%. And last but not least, if I'm reading that right, it says leading digital transformation and innovation. With all the new changes around us, business models are changing, the way we get work done is changing, and there are so many digital tool sets. So in order to be able to master those, there is a certain amount of time that we would have to spend to get to know those tools, understand how they work, and make the optimum use of those tools. So to lead digital transformation, there's also a certain amount of learning and relearning that you would have to do. So I guess these figures and representations are spot on.
Thank you, Sujay. Anu, would you like to add your thoughts on what people think is their number one agenda when it comes to learning?
Okay, I am sorry. I think it's interesting result from that perspective, learning and development, and also the HR point of view. Because I think I remember that the last time there are discussion from People Matters that the how important of the reskilling, upskilling, and also the giving more skills to frontliners, or for like something like salesperson or something like that. I think it's a good idea, giving the condition, giving the pandemic and etc., and also the future of HR. I think the most of the participants say that the important things for learning and development now is just upskilling and reskilling. I very much agree on that one.
Thank you, Anung. Now, let's start with our discussion. So, my first question is, how can learning systems keep pace, especially with the rapid evolution of digitalization in business? I'll start with Anung and then proceed with Sujay.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I remember that I have read one of the article, I think posted by Deloitte a couple months ago. Yeah, talking about the what is the the strategy, the learning and development strategy, giving now with the pandemic, and also with the microeconomic condition, etc. And the you know uh, the idea is giving the organization, people, culture together, and then those three category will bring a new strategy, will bring a new condition how we develop the learning and development make strategy, the new one. Because when we see from the those perspective, organization and people and also culture, then we come up with the the ellipse condition between those three condition, and we call it now as digital environment. The most of the digital environment actually is just how we have the right digital infrastructure, how if we want to leverage the exponential technology for the upscaling and reskilling. So the your your question is really up to how actually we post it, or how we the learning system can can change the or can accelerate the digitalization and also the business landscape now. I think those three must be in place in in the first strategy, Rachel.
Thank you, Sujay. Your microphone.
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. Going by what Mr. Park is saying, right? Park Anu is saying, it's spot on, because today when you're talking about cultural transformation that a lot of organizations are talking about, then learning cannot be a silo. So that's the first thing that I see when I talk to HR leaders similar to Park Anu, is that the learning has to be integrated with the entire people strategy of the organization, what he was talking about earlier. So, how is learning linked to different parts of the employee's life cycle, whether it's in the, in the hiring stage or in the onboarding stage, or whether it's for performance management or compliance or new projects. So it has to be seamlessly linked. And today, if you see through an employee's life cycle, so I learn on multiple occasions. If I would be learning for the current roles gaps, the future role gaps. If I'm going to become a people manager, I have to learn. If I change locations, I have to learn. So learning is pretty much constant and continuous. So given that, learning applications cannot stand isolated. And but what is becoming even more important today is, rather than just talking about the learning system or the learning delivery system, content is also becoming extremely important. And organizations today have their own frameworks, methodologies, propositions, differentiations with regards to what they do, whether it's product or services. And the innate knowledge of this lies within the organization. And you cannot crowdsource content for your own domain. You can crowdsource it internally, right? So the learning management systems, keeping in line with digitization, have to lend themselves to be able to help subject matter experts within organizations create, curate, and disseminate learning content. So I think that's becoming important. And I'm not talking about all the usual things, AI, machine learning, gamification. That's pretty much bells and whistles, and it's understood that it has to be there today. But it's about, my core message there is about learning not being standalone anymore.
I like that you it's kind of like emerging as a community of learners, and then from that community of learners you find the subject matter experts from within the organization. Thank you, Sujay and Anu. Now, what are the key factors we need to consider before implementing an enterprise-wide learning solution? Because after all, we have to see and maximize our ROI when it comes to L&D. What are the factors to consider? Um, Anu?
Sorry, I got in mute. Okay, I think it's a good idea. When we talk about the how we maximizing the learning, especially now, I put more emphasis not just learning itself, because actually we have to, do some e-learning, because learning now is becoming more flexible on online rather than the offline learning. So when we talk the ROI, so actually it is a matter of how we pushing, or how we cross our finger that the online e-learning must be good enough for the entire stakeholder. So again, still there are for me in my organization, there are four criteria that we should have ROI on learning. First is how we determine the business needs, because even though we still have the offline and also online learning, so the important things is how we determine the business need. Because during the condition, during the part of the macroeconomic condition, I think that determine the real business need is more important, and also driving the learning successful. So, and the second one is linked to the performance goal. So using that learning, we should come up with how we link the learning and also the performance goal. Because without a linkage, or without the how we turn down the learning to the performance, it's not a meaningful. So that's why link to the performance goal is more important. uh, the third one is how we uh, have a consultation, also the coach system or coaching mechanism between our organization with the SMEs. Because the SMEs can build the new way of learning. SMEs can build the new way of how we answering what the business needs, and how the increasing the performance goal. So I think the last one is how we evaluate the system, how we evaluate the original learning before we launch the new one. I think most four criteria that we develop now in organization is how we see that the ROI for learning. That's all, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you, Anu. Sujay, your mic.
I would like to pick up from where he left off, right? He spoke about the business side, saying that the learning ROI has to be linked to the business goal, right? There's a direct relationship. The second relationship was with the employee performance management, saying what does the employee need to achieve his or her goals, and where is the gap, and how can learning bridge that gap? So it's easy to show ROI based on the intervention that helps them bridge that gap. But apart from the other two areas that he mentioned, the other aspect that I think about is, it's very clear that employees who feel that an organization provides them the opportunity to grow their career within the organization, these employees are more engaged and they stay on with the organization for longer. So one of the ways of measuring the ROI of learning should be that, how is it helping an employee progress his or her career within the organization? Is it helping them bridge that gap to get to the next role? And when I say learning, it is not just, learning, e-learning or classroom learning. It could be mentoring, coaching, going job rotation, going somewhere to do a small fellowship within the larger organization. All that to me also constitutes learning. So how do you help somebody progress towards their career aspiration within the organization? This could be also one of the ROIs for learning, which is linked in a way to multiple HR metrics such as attrition and things like that, right? And last but not the least, I think Panu also covered off the other points. Last but not the least is, how well is the learning team doing from a administration and operational efficiency part of it itself is an ROI. So let's say in situation A, I'm able to cover only 70% of the organization. But in situation B, with the new solution that I want to invest in, I cover 100% of the organization. So that is the ROI in itself: coverage, penetration, having multiple formats of delivering content or access to other online content networks. So there are multiple ways in which you can define, like Anu said, but what is most important is all those definition points have to be linked to a business goal objective, so that it makes sense. There's a correlation.
So, from looking at it from an organizational, like a wider viewpoint, now we look at how there are different segments within that uh, community of learners. So, how can organizations ensure that learning is accessible, as you both have mentioned, and also inclusive of different segments of the workforce? How do we address, diverse learning needs? Anu?
Yeah, that's a good question. How you know? I think we are avoiding the more avoiding the inclusivity of learning for our workplace activities, because we have our people, our organization, our employees is giving more chance to promoting the diversity. So that's why, um, if if we do more diversity, if we do more not doing the inclusivity, I think help the our organization to increase the innovation. Uh, Again, we need that our organization, because like maybe the audience don't know that Pegadaian is 120 years old company in Indonesia. Then so I think we need more more increasing the innovation in inside the organization. And also I think you know the organization also can take the full advantage of the perspective diverse workplace like right now, because we run 4,000, almost 4,100 outlets in across Indonesia. So we have like a bunch of diversity of the employees, and also um, we have a set skill, different set skill for the employees, etc. So I think, yeah, the more diversity learning, I think is more meaningful, and also, uh, you know, that what we needed in organization. That's Rachel.
So from what I gather from your observations,
Mm-hmm,
innovation would have to be sort of like a byproduct of a diversity of perspectives,
mm-hmm,
since
mm-hmm.
people come from different backgrounds and have
Yep,
different things to contribute. Thank you,
yep,
Anu. Sujay.
yep.
So, this is, if you look at it, right, when we say, if we look at ourselves in school, right, the exam is the same, right, and there is a syllabus, but how people learn that same syllabus, some like to read it themselves, some like it to be read to them, some write in practice, while some just, can memorize very quickly, right? So different folks, different strokes. So now, if I was to talk about how do you help in adoption, I'll get to that, which is increasing accessibility. But from an inclusion point of view, what happened, and I'll answer the question in the chat as well. How do we ensure that learning training isn't just a tick in box exercise, right? So how do you ensure that is to me, inclusion here is to take into account different stakeholders who are impacted by that learning intervention, right? It could be business leaders, it could be functional leaders. It should not be that the team goes into this room, prepares some content, and comes out and tells them, okay, this is the content. So how do you include the people who consume that content to understand in the beginning before you design it? Like, I'm not talking about a learning needs analysis, but asking stakeholders on what is required at this juncture in business reality, what is required, and then go back and see how can you best provide that content element. I think there itself, you demonstrate inclusion by including stakeholders in helping you to understand what they need to bridge the gap, right? So that's in my head. How can the L&D team be more inclusive, right? The second part, when you're talking about what was the second part of the question? How is the learning? How
How do we address different learning needs?
Okay, okay. So that depends on a number of formats of the same content. So you can repurpose content in different ways, right? What we are doing now is also an informal way of learning, right? I'm also learning today as we speak. So you could have fireside chats, discussions, peer-to-peer collaboration. You could have small, like tech companies do things like hackathon, where you not only identify top talent, but you also help to increase the velocity of learning new skills or new ideas, right? uh, as a methodology of innovation, you can do podcasts, you can do you could do fellowships, like I said. So there are a number of formats to help employees learn. And today, most of us, when we don't know something, we go google it, right? In the flow of what we are doing. So how do you learn, how do you tap into content, and how do you consume content? I think, to me, all this takes care of different sections of your organization, who may enjoy different things, to different ways of learning. Like, I personally prefer looking at videos and understanding, so that I have the flexibility to play it back, again see it, again play it back. So that's one way. But when it comes to mandatory and compliance learning, you have to go through it. There is a check whether you spend time on the program for 10-15 minutes, and you have to pass the test, right? So that's a different thing, right? So you need to have different formats and different methodologies of repurposing that content and delivering that content. And all
So,
this has to be system enabled, because if it's not, then it's difficult to keep track of everything.
yep. So you already mentioned like repurposing content, experimenting with formats. What are other strategies that lead to strengthening the organizational learning culture? Of course, it's one thing to get if it's a mandatory training, for example, it's one thing to get all employees doing that training, but it's another when it actually inspires that love of learning within the org. How do you inspire your people to take up that culture of learning? Anu?
Well, unfortunately, now we live in the age of accelerated change. Yeah, I think we yeah change is it's it's almost every day now, and also the other thing is technology is also disrupting of our life. So yeah, if we talk about the what is there any different strategy? Yeah, the question is like, I agree with Sujay also when we talk about it, we formulate, how we understand about the business needs. Now is the question is, and we have a question of how can we meet with the organization changing needs in the long term, because I believe that the business need and also business strategy also change now.
Mhm.
And again, using that burning platform, I think it's time to start. We 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 build a learning culture that may be different from the previous one. But the important things is how, what what kind of business, what kind of learning culture that we develop. I think the bottom line is how we ask the employee to be more strive with the performance, and also that the business need or business strategy is success. So, but again, if the question is what is there any the new learning culture, I think it's depend on the business need. For us, for my organization, I think we develop sort of the new learning culture. But again, still we focus on the learning culture, still on the three parameters or three groups, which is the organization, talking about the vision, mission, and also the process, business process in the organization. And we have also the learning culture for team, and also we have the learning culture for individual. So those three elements of the learning culture still, uh, we use it. Still we focus on. Of course, with that kind of the new learning culture. I think uh, the important things is how we still have the open dialogue between the organization and the employees, and still we have like reflection of the employees. And again, in the end of the day, we have to build, or we have to increase the growth mindset of the employees to the new business need or business condition. That's my response, Rachel.
So before we can actually launch into
Mhm.
like campaigns for getting people into learning and development programs, we have to start with the organizational culture as a
Yes,
whole, where the
yes,
growth mindset is the
yep.
main message.
Yeah,
Thank you,
because
Anu.
in organization, I think it's consists of the vision, mission, and also values. And of course, we strengthen our values to to give more emphasizing the learning performance to the employees.
So when the vision and mission is clear,
Hmm.
the values translate into the learning agenda.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
thank you, Anu.
Yeah.
Sujay, would you like to add to that? Strategies for strengthening the organizational learning culture.
Okay. Okay. So any cultural change takes a long time, right? So it's not easy to do it because it has to run. It's like a nervous system. It has to happen throughout the organization, and the same thing applies to learning cultural change as well, right? So to me, if I was to think of it and see, I've taken down some notes I was typing when he was speaking. So, uh, you know to me, what becomes critical is it has to be the top priority for leaders. in every message, in every activity that the leadership team weighs into decision making, learning has to be a huge component of that. It has to be linked to outcomes. Now, when I'm talking about outcomes, I'm talking about business outcomes, employee performance outcomes, and customer outcomes, right? If you're talking about customer service, customer support, having delighted customers, that's the end goal. But what do your employees do to get to that level is a part and parcel of that learning culture that you want to have. You learn and you relearn and you learn again, right? So it has to be part of the larger outcome base, whether it's business people or customer. Then there was another question that was asked, the same question, saying, tick in the box. A lot of organizations today do learning as tick in the box, right? So there has to be a clear consensus with managers that managers need to allow their employees to take time out to do learning, whether it's performance based learning, developmental learning, whatever learning. So there has to be, something's got to give for that learning. It's not that you work from 9 to 6 and then you figure out some other time somewhere during the day and go do it on your own time, right? That doesn't work, because managers have to be conscious to make time for that. Then learning has to be digital. It has to be consumer grade. Today we are all used to very high tech social tool sets and digital tool sets. So learning has to be fun, it has to be connected. I told you all those other formats of learning. It has to be personalized, and there are a number of things that drive all this, right? Machine learning, AI, chatbots,
Gamification.
and gamification. Yeah, all those are tools. But at the end of the day, it has to be fun, it has to be personalized, it has to be bite sized. You can't give somebody 15 pages and say this is your learning. It should be fun, right? Then I go back to the earlier point that for learning cultures to work, content is very important, right? So the subject matter experts within an organization, again, you have to enable them to be able to do it, and also have time to be able to do it, spread the wisdom within the organization. And last but not the least, in my opinion, you cannot be one sided. You have to seek feedback from the learner, from the manager, from different stakeholders on what is working and not, or what is not working. There's a lot of other things that you need to do to bring about cultural change, but these are few of the elements that I think will become important to kind of shift the gears on that cultural change discussion.
So, from what you shared with us, Sujay, uh, you mentioned that leaders will have to make learning a top priority. And then from what Anung said about being purpose driven, how do you translate that into learning that's oriented towards business outcomes, employee performance outcomes, customer satisfaction, for example? It circles back into the idea that even enterprise tech is becoming consumerized. So the feel of it is, as you said, fun, and the content has to be interesting and engaging. So thank you, Sujay. My next question now, Sujay touched on this just in the previous question, but how can leadership now integrate L&D into their overall to the overall employee experience? How um, can we integrate that into a more seamless way, learning and employee experience? Anu?
Well, I think this is a good idea, but giving the idea is very really difficult how the explain how that one. Maybe I would like to hear what the Sujay perspective, because we also using that technology that Sujay have. So maybe I can add the argument, what is the SAP or SuccessFactor have Sujay.
Yeah. Okay, so employee experience. A lot
Mm-hmm.
has been said and written about employee experience, and in a way, SAP created that human experience management space. 3 to 4 years back, right? We moved from HCM to HXM, which is human capital management, to human experience management. So that pivot happened, right? But if I was to drill down to learning, it goes back to the initial point that I said. For a long time, learning has been running on a parallel track. Everything runs on a parallel track, right?
Mhm.
And learning has been running on a parallel track for a long time, right? So that's because view learning as a set of courses or catalogs linked to competencies that have to be done. All that is perfect, right? But
Mhm.
for learning to be truly beneficial from an employee experience or delight perspective, it has to be linked to every part of his or her life cycle within an organization where there's a need to gain new information or insight, right? So let me give you an example. Let's assume you have a team which is in front office, and you are, let's say, in a professional services environment, and you need to go in the next 15 minutes to present to a specific industry leader about that industry, right? And the person who needs to do it may not be from that industry. So in the next 15 to 20 minutes, he or she needs to gain access to the organizational information pool that's available. So he or she has to learn quickly, to be able to have, let's say, a 10-15 minutes conversation. So how do you access that information? It is a learning element, it is a learning intervention that's required. So that's where the experience of the employee comes in, saying, was he or she able to access that information? Was it well curated? Was it available on her or his palm top on a mobile surface to be able to learn? Was were they able to pull that? It's not pushed from the organization. Were they able to pull that? So that's just one example to say how in that moment, by having access to that exact industry specific learning content, which was not through an exam or something like that, that person is able to get the job done, have that meaningful conversation. Now that you're talking about that experience, now that is in the flow of work. So how do you integrate learning into the flow of work, apart from all the other things that we know, right? You have skills, you have skills catalogs, you have learning related to those specific skills. Somebody does an assessment, self manager, you see the gap, you get allocated to that learning element, there are tests, you revisit that. That's the proper way of doing. That's the formal process. But an example I gave you is an experience point for the employee to gain quick access to a content through the larger organizational knowledge base, to be able to deliver a business outcome, which was that meeting. Now this is employee experience. So to be able to do that, the learning system has to be integrated with the business environment, has to be able to curate that specific content, and that person should be able to search it effectively from that huge plethora of data, and then read it and deliver it. So that to me is an example of employee experience enabled by technology.
So it's a confluence of different factors like tech, the platform, the
Yeah,
content, and it
yeah,
all merges into that one moment where you need it the most and it's available to you. And
correct. It's available to you to get your job done, because it is a means to an end to get that job done, right?
yeah. Anu, would you like to add more
Yeah,
thoughts on?
yeah. I think it's very much the same with the what Sujay said. Yeah, about the employee experience on the learning, because we thought in in my point of view, in my organization, I think there are a couple of things that we know that what is the employee experience or employee experiment for in the learning. Yeah, I agree with Sujay that the first thing that we should check whether the employee have the experience or experiment with the new tools, the format, and etc. Because uh, first thing, when we change from the offline learning to the online learning, very much the culture is different, the situation is different, and etc. So I think we should have the important things on the how we have the employee experience on the and the learning is how the leaders also understand about the difference between the offline and also the online learning. The second thing is how we emphasize on the those diversity, because still the diversity is very much it's a big it's not issue, but it's a big a big matters in our organization, because we have those kind of numbers of outlet and also 14,000 employees across Indonesia with the different times, with different needs, and etc. And the last one, I think, as we talk about the how we have the more experience from the employees about the upskilling and reskilling, especially on the digital upskilling, because again, we our organizations now doesn't have the digital capability, but now we should have the digital capability. So that's why we fosters a new way of learning to have those kind of upscaling and reskilling employees, especially in the digital.
So before we turn to my last question, I'm gonna invite you to take a look at some of our audience questions. There are a lot coming in now, and one of them comes from Joanne. What skills are most valuable for helping employees cope and adapt through unparalleled disruption? So I guess this has to do with the the science of learning, maybe like what skills are most valuable for us to adapt. Um, I will throw the first question at Sujay.
Okay. So I think there is a lot of skills which are valuable for the disruption that we are in today, but an employee's ability or agility to learn, right? That itself is a skill set, right? Today, digital skill sets are becoming very important. Skill sets around emotional intelligence is something that is gaining momentum with managing employees who are working remotely, flexi working. The emotional intelligence, how do you deal with conflict, is becoming very important. While we're seeing this model evolve, the hybrid workforce, there's a lot of impact on employee well-being, right? The burnouts have become extremely high. So having the skill sets to cope, develop the skill sets of resilience, to be able to manage change, to be able to adapt to change, these are skill sets that are also becoming important now. But all these are, I wouldn't say they're soft skills, but these are life skills, right? To be able to learn some of these, again, you have different forums, you have work groups, organizations are doing a multitude of things to be able to help employees with this. But resistance to be able to adopt all this is the biggest challenge. And how do you cope with that is the more troubling aspect.
So, agility to learn, resilience, change management. Those are some of, I guess we can
Digital
call
skill
those
sets,
alpha
yeah,
skills.
yeah.
Anung, what skills do you see being the most valuable when it comes to getting
Well,
learners on track?
yes, yes. I remember then when I read the article by McKinsey when they talk about the adaptability paradox. I think that is the situation right now, when everything about the real supply chain, the real business process is shut down, and now becoming more hybrid work, remote working, remote shopping, remote studying, and everything should change now. And for those kind of the paradox settings, meet us in our organization need to be ready. Otherwise, we cannot cope with, or we cannot increase the capability, and also the increase the performance of our organization. So for us, I think the important thing is the adaptability, because the adaptability is is kind of the ability to learn more flexible, efficient, and also apply the knowledge across the situation. So we are not so surprising with the condition, but we very much we doing the reskilling and upskilling. So by becoming more awareness on that adaptability, and also the openness to change, my employees, the organization, all of the people in the organization can maintaining control over the more uncertainty. So this is a part of our journey actually, you know, because again I said that we are 120 years old company, and now we have to force using the digital capability because we should come up with the digital business and etc. So this is a part of how we change the needs of the learning itself. That's all, Rachel.
So I guess the evolution of learning is the face of the evolution of the organization as well. So
Yep.
thank you to our audience member Joanne for that question. My next question from the audience is from Xian John. What should we prioritize in training if we had to choose one? The so-called soft skills, or human skills, or power skills, or the more technical ones? Um, Anung, I'll start with you, and then I'll ask Sujay too.
Okay. Well, I we you know we actually we are not giving the idea of prioritizing the soft skill and also the hard skills, because in our competencies model we build as the onion rings of the soft skill and hard skill as a one of the big, I mean, one of the comprehensive model of competencies. So, but when we talk of a different level set of level or different grade of the employees, then we come up with with the agenda to give more prioritizing on the soft skill. Why? Because because we need more leaders, we need more capability that increasing the leaders to can respond and cope the condition of the pandemic, and also the situation of the different digital transformation, etc. So now very much our, maybe it's not the big numbers of the big set of the percentage, but I think it's about the 55 to 45% between soft skill and hard skill, Rachel.
Thank you for that insight, Anu. Sujay,
Yeah.
Your thoughts on whether we can actually prioritize one or the other? I feel sometimes we're creating a false dichotomy between the two. If we had to choose which one to prioritize, should we go with soft skills over technical skills, or how do we go about that?
I personally don't think you can prioritize like that, because there's a number of variables, right? You need to start with what is the role of the individual. If you're taking somebody who's doing Python coding, right, which is the core role of him or her, then the technical skills is important. But you work in a team, you need to be able to deliver the project as a team. So yes, soft skills are also important. So in this case, you should know how to code before you focus on the soft skills. So I think it's a tag rather than saying it's 60%. I wouldn't be able to give you that answer with 60-50 and a percentage, but I think it evolves with the role. It evolves with the fact that it's technical, not technical, front office or not, whether it's an individual contributor or a people manager. Are you on a leadership track? Then there's a lot of variations. But if the role is technical, yes, you will have to first be competent to do a technical role before you could focus on soft skills. So that would be my answer. It's very role specific, seniority specific,
So
fragmentation. Yeah.
So role and seniority specific. Anung also mentioned that it might have to be more of the soft skill, or I have I'm wary of using soft skill because it's not entirely soft, because you know I think it has to do with the the whole skill set of inside the problem solving ability. Like the competency of problem solving has a lot of different skills involved. So I guess that's what Anung was saying about, we have to know how to solve problems first, as a skill. So I guess that wraps it up for our audience questions. Thank you, Shane John, for your question. I'm going to head on to my parting shot, my question for our two speakers. Any closing comments or takeaways that you would like to provide our audience today regarding new ways of working and new ways of learning? Anu, your parting shot?
Okay, I think thanks, Rachel, for the conclusion. What the important things now is the learning is still the something the critical enabler of the organization. Yeah, and because of the that condition as the critical enabler, so I think we have to measure the impact of learning outcomes. I think that's an important message that I, I love to say for the conclusion.
So, learning as a critical enabler. So, we need to measure the impact of learning outcomes. Thank you,
Yeah,
Anu. Sujay, your parting shot for our audience?
Yeah. So I will like to pick up one question that I see as to
Okay.
this. So, and then I would end with that question as this thing.
Yep.
So the question saying, can the speaker share some examples on the ROI businesses are seen from modern learning methods, right? So that is a very important question, because we need to fix what is the definition of ROI for the business from the learning organization, right? So when I was initially speaking, I said operational efficiency. That in itself has a number of ROI KPIs within it, right? Can I do it faster? Can I do it more efficiently? Can I reach across to more employees? What is the time for me to develop a course content from concept to rollout? All these are ROIs, right? But it becomes important for us to not sit in isolation and set an ROI ourselves and then go report on it. Then it does not make a difference to the business, right? So that ROI has to be fixed in conjunction with the organization. So with that, what I would like to say, going back to your question on what are the last point of view, is that if you take all of us, we are all employees in our own capacity, right? There are certain things that the organization wants us to know and learn, right? Data privacy, security, compliance, mandatory learning. So this they want us to know, and we would need to do it. But there's a lot of things that I, as an employee, want to know, to learn, to be able to be better at what I do, and to also be able to get to my next role. Now, this is learning I want to do, right? So I should be able to access it easily. I should be able to enjoy myself while consuming it. And I should be able to see that it is relevant to the work that I do, right? So that to me, as an employee, is the importance of learning. Now, if any of these elements don't happen, then to me, learning is not very effective. I have a great piece of content, but it is buried in a catalog of 700 courses, and I need to be detective to go figure it out. Then that's the challenge. So it has to be accessible, easy for me to consume, and relevant. So completely from an employee's point of view.
Thank you for sharing your insights, Sujay, Anung. I had fun learning from all of the inputs you shared. And so, with that, we would like to thank our partner, SAP SuccessFactors. SAP SuccessFactors is the global provider of cloud based human experience management software. As Sujay mentioned earlier, we've moved from the age of human capital management and into the age of human experience management, which is HXM. Their application suite integrates onboarding, social business, and collaboration tools, and many other services to deliver business strategy alignment, team execution, and maximum people performance to organizations. For more details about SAP, you can head on over to www.sap.com to learn more about their HR tech solutions. And in the interest of time, we will have to wrap up today's session. It's been a pleasure hosting both you, Anung and Sujay, especially on the how learning is evolving in the workplace. To our audience, do stay tuned for more of our upcoming virtual sessions in this series, HR Spotlight. Um, of course, it is co-partnering with SAP SuccessFactors, and so we're excited to discuss more about the changing trends in the workplace. Again, this is Rachel Reynosa. Thank you to Sujay and Anu. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Sujay. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.